What's going on, everybody? This is Passion for Truth coming at you in another video. In case you were wondering, yes, I did change the name of the channel for personal reasons. Reason being is the last name that I had is going to be used for another business adventure of my girlfriend and I's, and we didn't want the content that I'm going to be putting on this channel kind of mixing with that brand, if that makes sense. So that we came to agreement that I would change the name of the channel, and this is the name that we'll be sticking with from here on out. Passion for Truth. And the reason why I call it that is because I've always had a passion for truth, and that's what I've always been about. So it was just a fitting name, and thought that it was kind of perfect for myself. But with that being said, we're going to dive into the topic. And this is probably going to be it is going to be a little bit lengthier than my normal video, because there's just so much to unravel here, so much to unpack, because it's such a big question. And it's the ultimate question. It's the question that everybody asks once they throw up their hands and say, I surrender, but all this flat earth stuff sounds so crazy. You know, some of it makes some sense, but what difference does it make? Why does it matter? And I'm going to start off by saying that it's not the shape of the earth that matters. I'm going to repeat that. It's not the shape of the earth that matters. It's the lie. It's the lie that matters. And we're going to unravel it all the way to the end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into why it's important for a Christian, and also why it's important for an atheist. And everybody else is going to fall in between as well, right? In other words, I'm going to show you why this is so important to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. And I hope that I have done it justice by the end of the video, and it has made sense to anybody who comes across this video. Why is it important? And I think I'll conclude why it's important as far as or why would they lie in the end, and how flat earth ties into all that. That's how I'll probably conclude the video. But first, let's start off by Christians. Why is it so important to Christians? Well, it's not going to, at first, when you come to this truth and this understanding, it's not going to change your life as in the matter of, you're still going to have to go to work every day. You're still going to have to get up out of bed and be a responsible adult, pay the bills, and all that stuff. So it's not going to change your life in that aspect at first. It could ultimately change your thought process and how you go about paying your bills and living your life once you come to this truth. So, and I've seen it happen to so many people. They literally dropped everything that they did when they came to this truth, and now they're evangelizing this. They're literally going out and they're sharing this truth with other people, when they had really successful businesses that they were running. They walked away from all of it, and now they're evangelizing, telling people about this truth because they realize why it's so important, right? So I have seen it personally, and it's personally changed my life in that aspect. So it won't at first, but then after a while, it very possibly could. But let's dive a little deeper. Why is it important for the Christian? Well, there's a good book out there called the Bible that makes a whole lot more sense when you come to this truth. It brings the scriptures to life. It brings the scriptures to life. What do I mean by that? Well, everybody goes into the Bible with their own personal biases. If your worldview is that you live on a spinning ball that's, traveling at unfathomable, ridiculous, insane speeds in 4 different directions through a vacuum of infinite nothingness, as I like to say, if you go into the Bible with that viewpoint, you're going to read the Bible with that viewpoint, okay? And you're going to cherry pick, and everybody's guilty of cherry picking the scriptures to go alongside their viewpoint, their worldview, okay? Everybody's guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. However, if you come into the scriptures knowing and coming to the understanding that you live on a flat and stationary plane, a terrarium, if you will, you're going to read the scriptures a lot differently. And guess what? I have personally had pastors tell me, because I've brought this topic up to pastors, and I've literally had them tell me that they would say, Brian, if what you're telling me is true, I'm not really against it. It would actually make the Bible make more sense. Literally had pastors tell me that, and they're absolutely right. It makes more sense. And I'm going to get into some examples of how the scriptures make a whole lot more sense when you come to this reality. And you can now validate the scriptures. And you can go out there and you can evangelize to people with confidence that what your scriptures, what your Bible tells you is true. Whereas if you don't have this understanding and you still think you live on a spinning ball in an ever-expanding universe and you're tiny and insignificant, and you're reading the scriptures and you realize deep down inside, you know that the scriptures aren't lining up with your worldview, but you're going to dance around them. You're going to say things like, oh, that's just, God wasn't, he wasn't being serious there. That's all metaphor. The Bible's not a science book. The Bible's not to be taken literally. It's actually just, fictional stories. You'll start saying things like that. And you'll cherry pick the scriptures that make sense to you. Whereas flat earth makes the scriptures real. Let's talk about some examples. Let's start in Genesis, the very first book. If God created the earth before the sun, what did the sun rotate around before? Or what did the earth rotate around before the sun was made? Because the earth was made, I think, on the fourth day God created the sun. So what was the earth going around before the sun came around? Okay. Furthermore, the Bible talks about a firmament. This is so important. This is one of the first things that you come to a realization of. That really is like a mind bending and a part of the Great Awakening, in my opinion. The firmament. God created a firmament that divided the waters from the waters. In other words, He created a divider. Whatever that divider is, the Bible describes it as a molten looking glass, right? How far up it is, we don't know. Where it's at, we don't know. Like NASA claims that it's the they have another term for it. They call it the Van Allen radiation belts, right? But I think what they're referring to is the firmament that God created and talked about in the first book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. So, and He created the sun, moon, and stars within that firmament, okay? And then there's waters above. The Bible also says that the earth is God's footstool. What does a footstool have? Footstool has pillars. It has legs. It's immovable. The Bible talks about, how many times does the Bible say that the earth is immovable? It's established. It's fixed. It's built on pillars. It has four corners. How does a spinning space ball in an ever-expanding universe make any sense to any of these scriptures? Let's go further. Genesis 2:1 says that after God's 6 days of creation, what does He say? He says it is finished. Well, if His creation was finished, how do we live in an ever-expanding universe that keeps recreating itself and expanding if it's finished? You see what I'm saying? What I'm trying to tell you is that you cannot believe in the scriptures and mainstream science, what mainstream science tells us today. You have to pick, right? You have to pick one. If you're trying to make them both line up, you're trying to make the Bible and mainstream science line up, you're going to be confused your whole life. And you're never going to have confidence in the scriptures. Never. You're always going to have that part of you that's like, well, I believe in God, but those scriptures are, they're a little difficult to understand because you have the wrong worldview. You've been programmed your whole life. And you've been programmed for a reason in the direction that they have programmed you, because they've tried to pull you away from the scriptures. They've tried to pull you away from God. Okay? Let's look at some other scriptures, right? Joshua 10:11, where Joshua commands that God stop the sun and the moon to stop moving. Why didn't Joshua command that the earth stop moving? Well, because the earth isn't moving, right? The sun and the moon perhaps might be. You know, the Bible talks about how I've heard pastors say this, like if you hear or see something in the Bible 3 times, it means it's probably important. Well, and I've also heard, pastors say like, oh, the Bible's not a science book. It's not to be used as a science book. Well, au contraire, okay? Because the Bible talks about the movement of the sun, moon, and stars probably 70 plus times. You know how many times the Bible mentions that the earth spins? That's a goose egg. 0. You think that would have been pretty important? That's not mentioned in the Bible, right? How about like when the Tower of Babel? Let's think about the Tower of Babel when they were trying to build a tower to reach the heavens. How does that work on a globe? When God is so far away, heaven is so far, we don't know where heaven is in the heliocentric model. We have no clue. But on a flat earth, when God's just above us, above the firmament, and we're on the basement floor in basically a terrarium, that makes sense. Tower of Babel makes sense. What about in Revelations where it talks about the stars falling down to earth in the end times? If Beetlejuice falls down to earth, we got some serious problems. That's not going to go too well. There's not going to be any more earth left. And we don't even want to dive into the distances to these stars and planets and stuff like that. They're just so ridiculous when you really start to question these things. But what I'm trying to tell you is that your scriptures don't make sense to you because of your worldview and because of this programming, this brainwashing that you have had since you were a kid, since you first stepped foot into a classroom. That's why the scriptures aren't real to you, because you have the wrong worldview. And that's why this is so important. It brings the scriptures to life, and you can now read the scriptures and you can see where God was being literal. Like God, when he was talking to Job, and read chapters Job 37 and 38, where God completely, he was telling Job that, where were you when I scribed the boundaries? How many times does the Bible mention the face of the deep? God scribed the face of the deep. You don't have faces on a sphere. So many things that we can talk about. Like I said, immovable, fixed, established, built on pillars, has 4 corners. All these things that the Bible talks about. You're going to think that those scriptures are just metaphors if you think that you live on a spinning ball. I think I've kind of beat the nail. I beat the dead horse here, right? Hopefully a Christian listening to this now understands that, hey, maybe I should look into this, because if what he's saying is true and the Bible can back it up, I can now be a confident Bible-believing Christian. Okay? Now I don't think it should be pretty obvious why it's important to an atheist. Because think about it, and I don't know a flat earther that is an atheist. That's a powerful statement. I don't know a flat earther that's an atheist. Why? Because once you come to the realization that you live in an earth system, the ground that you walk on is stationary. Everything above you in the sky is like a time clock. It's geared. You can literally set your watch to it. It was created. It has creation written all over it. If you live in a planetarium, you can no longer subscribe to the heliocentric nonsense, to the Big Bang theory, to the theory that you came from an ape, Or, from goo to you by way of the zoo, as Kent Hovind likes to say. You can no longer subscribe to that. You have to realize that this place was wonderfully made for you and that you are a wonderful creation. And I know this because I know that I have atheist friends. I have flat earth friends that were atheists before they came to this truth. That'll probably be listening to this video right now and might want to chime in. Because what's wild is they were atheists and they didn't want anything to do with God. They didn't want anything to do with the Bible, anything to do with the Creator, none of that stuff. And then they came to the flat earth truth, kicking and screaming like most of us do. And then when they came to the reality of it, they immediately knew that there was a Creator. And now they're out preaching the gospel. Now they're out evangelizing, sharing this truth with other people. They've left their jobs to do this full time when they were atheists. So don't tell me that this topic isn't important to the atheists and their salvation, because it can be. And an atheist, I like to say that an atheist is one flat earth knowing away from their salvation, because they can't deny it anymore at that point. And if you're an atheist, watching this and you're like, oh, this guy's a crazy flat earther, that's fine. I'm used to being laughed at and ridiculed at this point. I've been a flat earther for 5 years. You're not going to hurt my feeling anymore. I'll pray for you. But I say this to everybody. Don't believe a word that I'm saying. All I want to do, the only point that I want to get across to you, is to look into it, because this is important. This is important to everybody. Why else is it important? Well, once you come to this truth, you can no longer go back. You can no longer go back to trusting the government, for instance. As a Christian, you can't backslide. You can't become an atheist anymore. You have to understand that there's a Creator, and maybe you're just going through a bad time in your life and you're going through struggles. But like myself, when I was going through struggles recently, and I was questioning everything and kind of backsliding, got out of church and started heading in the wrong direction, before I found Flat Earth, which is, in my heart of hearts, this is why God led me to this path and why I am talking about it now, is because I was praying about it. I was praying for God to give me some truth. I was praying for God to show me that I mattered. Go figure. Show me why I matter, because I know that you're there, but my question is, do I even matter to you? Am I significant enough for you to even intervene in my life? That was where I was at, but I can't even really go that direction anymore, because I know that He's there. I just have to learn how to pray. And for, anybody else, for instance, I've seen people come to the truth that everybody watching this video right now will admit and say that the government lies. But when it comes to like the shape of the earth and, space and all that, we'll say, well, they would never lie about that. They would never lie about that. They'll lie about all these other things, but they won't lie about that, right? So you can actually come to the truth and know that your government is so deceptive that, 9/11, for instance, and I don't want to go into I can have my channel deleted or whatever, but once you come to that truth, I've seen people come to that truth and fall back to trusting the government again. I've seen people, with the current situation that we're in now, that we've been in for 2 years. For 2 years. Some people are waking up. But here's the thing. People wake up to these truths, these hard truths to come by, these hard realities that our government lies to us at every turn about all these events. Pretty much every war that we've ever been in is because of a lie. Yet we fall back asleep somehow after all this. After coming to these truths and understandings, we still fall back asleep, and we still go back to trusting our government. We go back to watching Fox News or CNN and fighting about politics online, because we're listening to one channel while our friends are listening to another channel. In other words, we're at a point we trust one source that's controlled by the government, by the way. And somebody else is looking at another media source that's controlled by the same government, by the way. In other words, we're trusting. We went back to trusting the government. We went back to trusting the people that we knew lied to us throughout all of history. But I don't know one flat earther that fell for the current pandemic. I don't know one flat earther that goes back to trusting the government ever again. And this isn't like an anti-government, video or whatever. All I'm saying is that you don't fall back asleep. Once you come to this understanding, you are now what we call woke. And I don't even like using that term, but that's for a lack of a better term. You wake up. You snap out of it. You snap out of the matrix. It opens your eyes like nothing else. And you can't go back to all that other garbage, all that division, political garbage. I don't even talk about politics anymore because I understand that it's a stage. The world is a stage. These guys, the cabal, the Zionists, the Freemasons, the people that control the banks, I understand that it's a stage and that these guys try to stay 5 steps ahead of us and they try to control our mind. Government. What does the word government mean? To govern the mind. Ment is a Latin word for mind. That's what it's always been about. Everything that they do is to divide us. They divide us by race. They divide us by sex. They divide us by the jabbo. They divide us by sports. They divide us by politics. Divide, 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 divide. If you want to rule a country, you have to divide the people. And that's what they do. But once you come to this understanding, you realize that. And you don't go back. And now you feel like you're on a mission to show other people that. Right? Like, I still get baffled by the amount of people that hold these political, parties or people up on a pedestal, and they think that their president or the last president is the savior that's going to save them, as if these people give 2 shits about you. Right? Here's a hint: they don't. But once you come to this reality, you understand that. You understand, in other words, you understand that there's a battle between good and evil. You understand that. It was written in the book. It was written in the Bible. We don't battle against flesh and blood. We battle against powers and principalities and evil. Now you understand that. Now you start to see with new eyes. You understand that, like, isn't this a crazy thought? They try to tell us that there's food shortages. But did you know that you can go out there and you can buy seeds and you can put them in the ground and water them and nurture them and up pops food? Did you know that you can do that? Did you know that you can actually take care of yourself and strengthen your immune system and not always get sick? Did you know that water is an abundant source and we'll never run out? Did you know that they try to scare you with everything, like nuclear bombs, for instance? You might want to look into that one. In other words, what I'm telling you is this subject might be scary at first. But once you go a little bit deeper and you gain a little bit more knowledge, it starts to become enlightening. And it frees your mind. It opens your eyes. You start to get out of the matrix that you've been in your whole life. And now you can take back control of your life. I talk about this all the time. Taking back control of your mind. Freeing your mind. True freedom. Freedom from all the lies and deception. And the good book tells us that This is why you shouldn't be afraid, right? You shouldn't be afraid of this truth, because the Bible tells us that in the end, good wins this battle. And that's why I am so passionate about it, because I feel like it was put on my heart to share this, because God gave it to me when I was asking for it. And I would not go on living in happiness if I didn't share it. I would feel incomplete. I would feel like I let God down if I didn't share it. So hopefully that answers your question. You might still think I'm batshit crazy. It's okay. Like I said, I'm used to it. But the only thing I want you to get out of it is not to believe anything that I say, but just to look into it. As a Christian, look into it because it brings your scriptures to reality. As an atheist, I say look into it because maybe salvation is important. Maybe it's time to realize that you are wonderfully made, and that God created this place for you, and that you're special, not insignificant. With that, take care. God bless. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.